All right, we are on to chapter 14 of Devil's Bridge, and this is our last chapter in the book. So we're going to find out how it all ends up. We know that Ben had caught a huge fish, but he let it go. So let's see what happens next. As I walked down the beach, I looked out at the waves crashing over the rocks of Devil's Bridge and imagined my bass out there somewhere swimming free. I felt strangely light, as if I could swim as easily as a fish or fly if I wanted to. Approaching the dunes, I saw a figure moving toward me along the path. I wondered vaguely if it might be the big man, but I didn't feel afraid. Ben? Mom, it's me. We met on the path and began walking together. Sorry if I'm late, I said. I just thought I'd come down and see how you were doing. That's good, Mom. It's been a long time since I've been here, she said. I know. Do you still want to go to the award ceremony, she asked. Sure, I said. I felt as if I had just awakened from a dream, and the dream still felt more real than the real world. We got into the car, and as we drove to Edgartown, I told Mom about the fish. At least I tried. It was hard to explain, but I think she knew what I was trying to say. When I finished, she said quietly, I guess you are a fisherman after all. I'd tell Jeff, too, of course, and Chick. They'd understand. But to most people, it would probably sound like just another fish story about the big one that got away. In town, we had to park about a mile away from Chick's and walk. Nearly every parking space was filled. We walked past cars and jeeps and trucks with fishing rods on the roofs, rods sticking out the windows and bristling out of the rod holders like porcupine quills. Derby headquarters was jammed with fishermen and their families, and people who simply came to enjoy the show. It seemed as if everybody we knew was there. Children were running around, babies were crying, and everyone was talking fish, telling tales of the past 3 days' adventures and, of course, the good old days. Mom and I inched through the crowd saying hello to folks. I kept an eye out for Freddie and the big man, but I didn't see them anywhere. Up near the makeshift stage, I caught sight of Jeff and whistled to get his attention. He waved and motioned us forward. Then I saw a huddle of people standing near the judges' table. I recognized Mr. McDonough, Otis Pritchard, Lucy Silva, Chick, the Edgartown police chief, and I couldn't believe my eyes. Barry Lester. I elbowed Mom and pointed to the group. What's he doing here? I asked. I don't know, she said, looking surprised. I haven't seen him since yesterday morning. Come on, I said, pulling her through the crowd. Hello, Kate. Hello, Ben, said a chorus of voices as we approached. What's going on? I asked. Everyone began to talk at once. Finally, Chick shushed the others and told us that Freddie was in custody in the Falmouth jail over on the mainland. I listened with astonishment as Chick said that Barry was responsible. Barry? I repeated stupidly. You? I asked, turning to a flushed and smiling Barry. Barry shrugged modestly, still grinning like mad. What happened? Mom asked. Chick told how Barry, after leaving our house Saturday morning, had come to Derby headquarters to ask what was going on. Heck, I'll tell you, tell it, Barry, said Chick. You're the hero here. Well, said Barry, Otis told me the whole story. And I got to thinking about how Freddie had said he wanted to mount the fish, and his buddy had told him to get rid of it. And it seemed to me that maybe Freddie wouldn't listen to him. From what I'd heard, Freddie was the kind of guy who would want that fish around so he could show off a little bit. But he couldn't go to a taxidermist here on the island because he'd get caught. So I started calling taxidermists on the mainland and asking if anyone had brought in a big striped bass. On my third call, bingo. Freddie didn't go too far away, just right over on the ferry to Falmouth. Anyway, I called the folks here at headquarters and they called the police. Tell them about the mercury, said Chick. Turning to me, he added, this is incredible. Barry went on. I told the taxidermist there might be mercury in the fish somewhere, and he laughed. He knew that trick. Apparently, all you have to do is slide a tube into the fish's flesh, pour liquid mercury into the tube, then remove the tube, and there you have it. A fish with added weight that is almost impossible to detect unless you fillet the fish and cut up the meat. Everyone murmured with astonishment. Now we've got all the evidence we need, said the police chief. Poor Freddie. He got into something way over his head. He never was too smart, and he sure wasn't the brains behind this operation. He says the other guy, whose name is Roy Barrow, by the way, saw him catch the big fish 6 days before the contest. It was Barrow's idea to keep it alive, add the mercury, and split the prize money when they won. What about the big guy, Roy Barrow? I asked. Did you catch him yet? No, but we will, said the chief. Make no mistake about that. What will happen to them? I asked. They'll be brought up on charges of grand larceny, Ben, and that's serious business. I watched dumbly as Mom and Barry talked. I couldn't believe it. Barry Lester playing detective and saving the day? I had a sudden thought. Barry, I asked, were you down at the dock Saturday night looking for Freddie? Yes, said Barry. I thought I might find him and talk some sense into him. That was before I had the idea about calling the taxidermist. I didn't find him, of course, because he was over in Falmouth. I shook my head admiringly. I couldn't help it. Who would have figured Barry for a hero? It wasn't hard to see why he'd done it. He was looking at my mom like a dog waiting to be scratched. And Mom was looking back at him with the kind of smile I hadn't seen in a long time. Just then the microphone gave a piercing screech. Everyone looked up at Otis Pritchard, who began welcoming us all to the 47th annual Martha's Vineyard Striped Bass Derby. Several people made speeches and everyone pretended to listen, but we were all waiting for the big announcement. Because of the last-minute discovery about Freddie's fish, no one knew for sure who had won the contest, and you could just feel the suspense in the room. The police chief made some grave comments on the seriousness of cheating in an event such as a derby, and said how sad he was that such a thing had happened on our island. He said he hoped nothing like it would ever happen again, and everyone cheered. Finally, the winners were announced. The small prizes were awarded first, and we all clapped and whistled as the names were read. I whooped and hollered as it was announced that Jeff's mother had won second place with her big bluefish. Everyone knew Gus Rogers, and no one was surprised to hear that he was the big winner, with an 18 3/4-pound blue caught off the shore of Wask. The award ceremony ended with Chick saying solemnly that no stripers had been entered, not legally anyway. But that doesn't mean they aren't out there, he said. Someday, if we're careful, these waters will be filled once again with striped bass. And maybe someday, someone really will break Jack Daggett's record. Mom caught my eye and smiled. But for now, Chick finished, it stands. Everyone cheered. After we had congratulated Mrs. Manning and teased her about what she was going to do with all her money, we were ready to go. Ben, said Barry, I was wondering if you and your mother would like to go out for ice cream before you head home. I was scratching some itchy red bumps on my legs. Sure enough, I had gotten poison ivy just like a silly tourist. I looked up at Mom and then at Barry's eager face. Okay, I said. Sounds good to me. And that is the end of our book.